Hi, welcome to the show, Create a Generational Love Cycle. This is Tamika Chambers. And instead of focusing on breaking the cycle, the generational cycle of pain, I want to create a movement that creates a generational cycle of love. Because pain can be a great teacher, and we can use our pain, regardless of the trauma you experienced as a child, whether it was child abuse, physical, sexual, domestic violence, whatever it is, we can use our pain to brighten the world. Because now we have the compassion, we have the longing that we are not here just to be abused, but we are here to fulfill a divine purpose. So thank you for listening to Create a Generational Love Cycle. And today I'd like to talk about the word resiliency. On November the 15th, 2021, we are halfway through November, 1 month away and a few days before the end of the year. And I know people will be getting ready to write down their goals. Those of you who still believe in setting New Year's goals about losing weight, getting your blood sugar under control if you have diabetes, preventing diabetes by doing other things, again, weight loss and eating healthy, or taking better care of your heart, or go on a walk or join a support group this year. But as I've been focusing on two things that I've been focusing on in this November month, one of them being the link between chronic health condition and childhood trauma. And I'll talk about when I actually heard the word for the first time, heard the R word, and it lit something within me. So as you may know from my story, between my first cycle of pain, let me just start there, was when I experienced or grew up in a home where my father abused my mother. And one day I told on my father. And the next thing I knew is that I was in the kitchen on trial for telling something I had no business sharing. I had no business telling people what was going on at home. And that day, my father slapped me for the first time and the only time that I remember. And so when I experienced abuse, sexual abuse, after my mom moved away from my father, left that marriage, and we went to live with some family members for about 5 years, beginning around the age of 5. Two family members led me into the dark wilderness of childhood sexual abuse. And so for 5 years, I held on to that secret. But thankfully, someone, my Moses, came and she told the secret. The very person that people often belittled and made fun of and labeled. She was the one that broke the secret, the chains of secrecy. That she couldn't come for a family visit because she didn't want that to happen again, to be forced to have sex again. And so she was my early representation of don't judge people by how they look. Don't label people, because as my mom often said, you never know who you're going to need. And thankfully, before entering puberty, that secrecy was broken. So I continued on with life. And it was during school, my elementary school, that a fire about learning started really developing within me. Because I learned in school, in elementary school, that my body, my space was my space. My body was my body, and no one had a right to violate my space. And so as I continued to take the student approach to life, and I experienced a detour when my mom told me about the The opposition she had experienced when she was married to my father, the throwing away of her books in the garbage can. If you've seen the burning bed of a woman who experienced domestic violence, and she ended up going to trial because her husband was burnt alive in the home. And so when I found out about my mother's opposition, out of anger, out of a need to redeem myself, I traveled down the path of nursing. I knew it was a detour. I knew nothing about nursing, but the pain that I had led me down that path. And I know many of you probably can relate, whether it was something else that you did because you felt like you did not have a purpose in life. I didn't know what I was good at doing. Just days before I heard about my mother's opposition, my mother's trials and tribulations, my mother's unsuccessful journey of becoming a nurse, I became something else other than myself. I went down a path. And that path, fortunately, continued to groom me into the person that I wanted to be, because I was fearful. When we talk about, so many people say that when they've gone through childhood sexual abuse, that I felt like I had an evil spirit in me. I was so fearful of becoming, more specifically about Jay, the person that was the mean family member, the mean man, the mean one, the one quote unquote I said was mean. I was so scared of becoming like him. I was running. And years later, I realized that the person I was running from was myself. In that dark wilderness, I was trying to get away. But with God's grace, with Spirit's grace, with higher intelligence grace, higher power grace, the goodness that is in the universe, grace, I went through a program that taught me about some key concepts in life that helped me along my spiritual journey of the truth. One day I was standing in my nursing class. We had just started our nursing classes in my undergraduate program at SIUE, Southern Illinois University in Edwardsville. And I saw the word, I actually saw it, and it played in my mind, resiliency. Resilient. And when you look at the definition of resilient, it means to bounce back, to return to its natural shape. And I thought then that I'm resilient. After all that I had been through, I was still standing today. I was still standing that day. After all that I've been through, that childhood sexual abuse and other things. And I know why I was standing, because it was with God's grace that I didn't focus so much on the abuse, that I decided to become a student of life, and that I knew that my life was more important deep down inside, even though I still struggled at times. But I knew my life was so much more bigger, more important than these childhood sexual abuse that I had experienced. And so when we talk about resiliency, bouncing back to our natural shape, to who we really are, like a rubber band. You take a rubber band, and the more you pull it out and pull it out and pull it out, the less elasticity it has, right? But I believe that we have everything we need inside of us to help us return to our natural shape, to help us return to that spirit that knows why we are here and the work that we are here to do. I believe that every experience prepares us for the next. And I don't mean just good, quote unquote, good experience. I mean these storms that we go through in life, these paths, these dark valleys, these mountainsides, that everything we go through prepares us for the next. That within, as I share in my memoir in currently chapter 5, we have tools. Because when I read the Bible, and as I've stated, it's not about being religious. For me, it's about searching for truth. And I believe that the truth is within us, that is in our heart, is in our mind, is in our soul. And that when we hear people talk, that moves us, that really moves us to the core, that often it is the truth that gets beaten like a drum, that it vibrates within inside of you. Ding, ding, ding. And you feel it and you know it. And that is where our resiliency lies, in the truth, in that I believe we are created in the image of our Creator. Whether you call it God, whether you call it nature or universe, when I look out the trees, today it is stormy, you guys, here in Oregon. And the leaves are blowing this way and that way. But the root of the tree, the stem of the tree is standing firm, standing poised amidst all of the storms that comes its way. That I believe we're made in the image. One of the things I focused on was, as a child, was the tree across the street. I'd sit on the porch and just look at it. And every season I would see it beat up by weather, the sun, the rain, the snow, but it stood so strong and came back every year as poised and more beautiful than the year before. And I look at the trunk of that tree, I get close and admire in amazement. I love trees today. I can't tell you what tree is what tree. I can't really talk about the names of the tree, but I know the name that I call the tree. It's resiliency. Its ability to stand firm and strong regardless of what's thrown to it. And the very first person that I saw resiliency in, the very first male person, after everything I had been through with men in my life, my father, the 2 family members, and others, I saw the portrayal of Jesus. I saw resiliency. I saw within resiliency the ability to forgive. Forgive them, for they do not know what they do. I saw the ability to heal when people doubted him and doubted faith in God and Father. I saw him have compassion when he felt betrayed, when someone betrayed him, when Peter denied him 3 times as he knew what would happen, when Judas gave him up because of coins of money and jealousy. I saw resiliency, and I wanted to be that. It wasn't so much about what you call it. It's about what that is, what it is, its being is. We get so wrapped up sometimes in labels. I never liked labels because you want to confine me in a box. And resiliency says, I cannot be confined. What you did to me as a child was not about me. There is a cycle of pain, your pain, that you tried to project onto me. And it is my right, my divine right, to say, no, I will not pass this cycle of pain. I will not let it rot in my body and destroy the messages, the nervous system in my body. That I believe, you guys, this whole issue about chronic trauma, chronic illness, chronic health conditions, there is a link with trauma. When I was in my 20s, I read, I would go to work, you guys, and I would see people come in and out of the hospital for physical conditions, diagnosis, but often they shared those childhood traumas with me, whether their parents didn't support them or they had been abused physically, sexually. And I used to wonder why they opened up to me the way they did. And And it's because I needed to be here today to share that message with you, to see the link. There is, I believe, a link, and there are studies out there to say about emotional trauma and headaches and migraines, that our physical symptoms are because of our emotional, the anger, the betrayal, the confusion, the resentment, the jealousy, the guilt, the shame gets into our programming of our body, the brain, the nervous system. And when you talk about rare conditions, it is that unique person's response to that emotional trauma that they've had. Now, this is just my perception, but there have been times, you guys, when I've thought about sickness and I got sick. There have been times when I didn't even think about sickness. The flu, I used to go and say, oh, I always get the flu when somebody's sick. When I came here in 2019, my son, 2 months later, had the flu. Severe enough that he told us, Mommy, Daddy, you guys need to pray for me. And my mother had shared that a girl had died of the flu overnight. I don't know exactly what happened, but I prayed for my son. That I took care of him, didn't even think about getting sick. Felt confident in kale and green tea. And do you know, for the first time ever, with someone being so close to me, I did not, none of us got the flu. But a year later, a little over a year later, because I thought of sickness, I got it. And recently, I felt myself getting sick. And I said, I cannot afford to. And the symptoms went away. And I never share things to brag. I always tell, whether it was my students or people that I was educated, I tell things to inform you that I believe even more powerful than now, after my professional and personal journey after childhood sexual abuse, that we don't need to struggle. That whatever you see yourself as, you will be. And if the Word of God tells me that I am made in God's image, then I have within me, chapter 5 of my memoir, what I mentioned, the tools, love, compassion, forgiveness. I have truth inside of me. I have the ability to heal myself. When I read the books by Louise Hay, You Can Heal Your Life, Jack Canfield, Eckhart Tolle, when I read about Gary Zukav. And I know I've gone back and forth about Eckhart Tolle or Eckhart Tolle, and I've heard both, but you know who I'm talking about. The power of now. I am resilient because I choose to be. I choose to be more like my Creator. We can choose to be more like our Creator. We don't need to struggle, because the statistics say that because you've been through this, you will be this. You will experience anxiety. You will experience chronic health conditions. I saw, and I was trying to find where childhood sexual abuse was considered a chronic health condition in itself. That we don't need to struggle. Within us is the ability to heal. Within us is the ability to bounce back to the powerful, resilient spirit that we are, and to do the work that we come to do. Our life experiences are not to push us into the grave. It's not to wake up each morning in pain and regret, but to say, okay, I've been there. I know that. Now let me do something with it that will help others, that will help them brighten their light, to tell my story and to tell what has helped me through it. That is how you build resiliency. Is that you realize that whatever you've gone through, whatever someone has tried to project on you, was not you. We make a lot of times the impersonable personal. that their pain is not our pain. And so within you is the ability to be resilient, to bounce back. But you have to believe. And I've seen and heard many stories where a change of belief led to a change of health. And I've seen it in my own life, positive and negative, or healthy and unhealthy, consciousness and unconsciousness. So today, I want you to think about, what does resiliency mean to you? Who are you? Who made you? What characteristics do you have within you? And what have you taken impersonal to be personal? Personal. Can I say the word? What have you taken personally? Because whatever you have taken personally probably is at the root of what you're going through now. Each day, know that you are here for a reason. Your life has purpose. This is Tamika Chambers with Create a Generational Love Cycle. It starts within you, within me, so that we can regenerate this world. We have the power to bounce back to who we are, to let our light shine, to let our powerful healing heal others. Because in it, in resiliency, you guys, when we show it, when we become it, we remind others of who they are. Catch a new episode of Tamika Chambers, Create a Generational Love Cycle, every week as I share ways that we can use our pain to break the cycle of pain and let our light shine.